Z?
Just checking YouTube. Okay, we are live there.
Thank you.
We're live on YouTube.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to our Chatham Township Committee meeting of October 8th, 2024. We are returning from executive session, so our clerk has confirmed that adequate notice has been given, and I would ask everybody to join me for our flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight is our workshop meeting, so things run a little bit differently. It's much less formal. But I will start by opening with our hearing of citizens. I'm going to ask our clerk to give the guidance, but I will ask our scouts who come here for a special announcement to come up first during that hearing. So, Mr. LeConte, if you can provide the guidance.
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you're watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you're recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment session. Written comments, of which we had none, if they had been submitted to me before 3 p.m., they would be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services.
Thank you. I do understand, Karen Bloomfield, you have a hard stop, so I'm just going to ask our scouts to wait 1 minute. If that would be all right. Okay.
Good evening. Hi. Working? Good? Okay. Karen Blumenfeld, 12 Maple Street, Chatham Township. I'm here on the 2 draft ordinances that are up for comment. The first one that I wanted to talk about is the ordinance that would propose to ban contractors from doing indoor work on Sundays if it creates a disturbance outside. So for example, that would be noise or any other type of disturbance. As I mentioned the last time, I experienced this 4 times when the house next door was going up. And so the police were not able to enforce when it was happening inside, even though I could hear it, because the ordinance only pertains to noise taking place outside. So I just wanted to be here to just reinforce and, again, re-explain and what happened to me, and hopefully you'll be able to better understand what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do. I think that the noise level, it shouldn't be measured by decibels, because let's be honest here, no Board of Health member or health department employee is going to come out on a Sunday to measure decibels. So I think like it's one of those things, if you hear it, okay, it's encroaching, and it's interfering with the quiet enjoyment and use of the neighbor or the resident. So it's basically, you know, keep it simple, and it's much easier to enforce. The second ordinance that I'm here on is the parks. I'm really happy that there's now the reference to the local ordinance that explains how you define smoking, which includes vaping and all tobacco products. I would encourage you to think about adding to the actual list of prohibited activities where smoking is mentioned, and then the ordinance that defines smoking. I don't think residents are going to be able to, on the hot minute, find that definition. So something that's so easy to do would be to just, where it says smoking, add smoking, vaping, all tobacco products. And it's crystal clear to everybody what's prohibited, and it makes it so much more easy to enforce, and in fact it makes it self-enforceable. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. I'm Jessica Romeo, Pine Street. I am the girls' troop leader. We've been together since kindergarten. Natalie's our newest joiner recently, but we've been together since kindergarten. So this is Troop 97790, and they just completed their Bronze Award this summer, and they're really excited to share it with the community. The Bronze Award is open to Girl Scout juniors in 4th and 5th grade after they've completed a journey. We did the outdoor journey and learned about leave no trace principles, eco-camping, and things like that. We also talked a lot about how being outdoors is good for your mental and physical health. The hiking trail guide seemed like a perfect extension of the journey. Girls must spend at least 20 hours on building their team, exploring and understanding their community to identify an issue, and then put that into an action plan and tackle the issue in order to earn their Bronze Award. I think it's pretty amazing that girls in 5th grade could accomplish something like this. So a couple of the girls wanted to stand up here and quickly explain to you how they did this, what their process was. You can bring that up, Michelle. You want to say your names really quick?
I'm Audrey. I'm Natalie.
Do you want to say what you guys did? You met together, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
We all went on different trails and collected info on things that we observed to make a brochure. We remembered to leave no trace so that our time outside was not only good for us, but also good for nature. Nature is good for your mental health and reduces stress.
We met together and came up with a plan.
So we all met together to come up with like what we were gonna do.
We looked at books.
We looked at books and other brochures.
The trail.
And we split up the trails, so each of us went on a different trail, and then we did a write-up about them. And then we made the brochure. Hi, I'm Ashley, and I learned that if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed at school because of a test or a quiz, I can like go for a walk, because as we went on the trails, it was very relaxing to me. And
Hi, I'm Claire. I live on Orchard Road in Chatham Borough. So my favorite trail was the Green Village Pond Trail because it was so cool and there were very diverse traces of wildlife. There were ponds, creeks, rivers, marshes, land bridges. There were many different types of flora and many different types of fauna.
So their brochure will live at the library, and if possible, we had asked if it could be posted to the Township website and the Borough website. And then girls have created this poster board about how getting outside is good for your mental health. And we shared this with the other Girl Scouts.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. Yeah, that was Thank you all for your efforts. I don't know if your troop leader told you, but we have a mayor's walk, and I love being able to share with the residents all our beautiful trails. But this also helps because sometimes we can't really, I don't think, to tell them how long it is, how difficult it is, accessible. So this is a tremendous resource, and it's just easy. There's a lot of people who just don't know what's available to them, so this is really, really such a great job that you all did, and such a wonderful resource. So thank you again, I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Thanks for letting us present.
Thanks.
Did we have anybody on Zoom who wants to speak?
We do not have any hands raised.
Okay, seeing no one else, I will close the public session. And we'll move on to our reports. Where do you want to start?
We've got, well, yeah, I mean, John's gonna be a little bit longer. Maybe Debbie or the chief mayor, because theirs is a little bit shorter, and then, we do John or Glenn.
Okay. Do you want to, CFO, Debbie, you want to come up? Yeah, you're up.
Main reason Debbie is here is to talk about the note sale that we just underwent. It is a requirement that she brings that up at a meeting, so Debbie?
There was a distribution that you should have received that had the breakout of the two. It's a determination and award certificate, because we had two different notes. We're rolling over a note that was from ordinance 2022-16. It was for $1,597,000. This was for the affordable housing. So this is a taxable note, which then led to you get less bids, less people are interested in that type of note. But we did get two people that bid on it. Give me 1 second to get that open. The winning bid was for 4.65%, and that's for a 1-year note. The second note was for $1,385,000. That was for this year's ordinance, 2024-14. The entire ordinance was not bonded. We did not bond for the fire vehicles because they will not need to be paid for until delivery. So we're not borrowing those funds until necessary. So we only borrowed $1,385,000. And the winning bid on that was 4.25% with a premium, which brought their net interest cost down to 4.069. And that was the winning bid. That's also for 1 year, and that is a tax exempt note. So we had two bids on that one. Any questions?
So that's an ordinance at the next meeting? Or it's a
No.
resolution?
No.
Just
Has
to
to
mention
be
it.
Oh, just a
discussed.
minute? Okay.
Yes, it has to be put in the minutes by law.
Okay.
That's it. Any other questions?
As far as legislation for the next meeting, the Finance Committee, Debbie and I will be meeting on the WPC capital for 2024, which follows the conversation that we had with John as far as needs over there and his assessment. So that would require a resolution to amend the capital budget with the exact figures, and then an ordinance to introduce for the WPC capital. We are intending that it would be fully funded with within the utility, so no borrowing would be needed for that.
Okay.
And we have started also the budget process for 2025. So I'm gonna let you know that we are yet again moving more and more ahead of schedule than we have in previous years. So been adjusting that, and probably this is going to be the level for the future. You know, around this time frame is when we'll be starting it.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to see you.
You too. It's been a while.
Okay, and the chief, you want to come up?
Good evening.
Hello.
So, Chief, you're here to talk about all your vehicles?
Yes.
No, he's here to talk signal replacements. There was an email, and this is not a new this is not a new conversation, but it is following up on the conversation we had about the first intersection. Since then, there has been a mishap at another intersection, and requires a decision from the governing body as to how to proceed. So Chief, why don't you follow up with that, please?
Yeah, like the last time we met, we have an issue with another signal at an intersection. This one is Green Village Shumpike Road. After the milling and paving that was just done, the signal became inoperable to some extent. So the county came out and their assessment, I'm sure you've all read, item 2, is that it needs to be replaced. We're gonna fix it, but it's just putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. So at some point, we're going to need to move forward with the replacement of that one.
Now, is that the one that was part of the overall project for that area that they were
Yeah,
talking about?
that was 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
So that included, so that lights at Green Village and Shunpike, but their work would include Southern and Shunpike, which I know they just,
No, that's Madison's traffic light. That one was replaced. They were both supposed to be replaced at the same time. But for whatever reason, we balked at an improvement of that intersection,
okay.
so we didn't replace that light.
So the work would solely be the Green Village, Shunpike light?
Coming out of the Chatham Mall.
Okay, so it's not any of the other work associated when they came in 2017, because they were talking
No.
about having the flow, traffic flows different?
Yeah, they're gonna make it a T intersection instead of the branch off, the yield.
Okay.
There's gonna be a dedicated T intersection. I think the plans were in that email.
Yes, they were.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, I got a little confused, because I thought they did have both intersections, so there's nothing else at the, okay.
No.
Okay, and then that's versus what you brought to us the other time, which is,
The county's assessment is this light at Green Village and Shumpike should be prioritized over
okay.
Fairmont and Southern. Or, I'm sorry, Southern and River.
Really?
What's your opinion?
I agree.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I agree. Because when I was there, no less than 10 people pedestrians crossed that intersection. And there's no light for pedestrian flow. So
Wow, okay,
I would agree with them.
okay.
But it doesn't seem like they want to replace it unless we redo that intersection.
Interesting.
Chief, the paving, the paving resulted in the county looking at the light, or is it something, is it
Well,
just coincidental?
Being that it's a county road, when they damaged the they damaged the wiring underneath the roadway when they milled the road. So the arrow was not working. So I called the county out, because it's a county light, and their assessment was it's not their responsibility, it's ours, and that the whole light needs to be replaced anyway. So,
Any objections to moving forward with this one first? Any sense of when the next one would happen then?
we only have one left after that. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Well, is there an objection to going up the chain here and having us work with the county to look at this again? I mean, because it's, if the responsibility falls to the Chatham Township taxpayers for a county light.
well, I think it's a 70-30 split.
Yeah, it would be a 70-30 split. We have a long-standing agreement apparently with the county. I think the last time we talked about it, we had included that agreement, like 2 months ago in the packet. It was an agreement that seems to be standard across all the towns that they have now, this policy on how intersections that the county with municipalities are apportioned for money. So I don't think they're gonna make an exception in our case when that seems to be a process countywide.
How about the county co-op in terms of liability and, because, I mean, there must have been other damage done by county co-op participants in the past. Does any of that responsibility fall to the co-op or to
So we did, we filed a claim
We did.
with our carrier and letting the carrier handle it. I just want to be careful as to how deep I can get into it with the potential litigation. But
Okay.
the hope is that, we filed a claim, because we did go to them and say,
We did. But
you
this-
guys gotta make us whole, and they pushed back on that. They said, you gotta prove it, this, that, and the other. I'm like, okay, fine.
This was an
Let the
unusual
insurance carrier
circumstance
handle
because
it.
it was actually the water company hired, because they put the main in, that was Township, so they hired the contractor to come up and pay, but the county did not, so.
Hmm.
Yeah, So that's why I was like, we'll file the claim with our insurance company and let them try and subrogate and sort out whose fault it is and, try and make us whole on the repair itself, but that also could take time.
Okay. Good, so it sounds like we're moving forward with Green Village now.
Yes,
Okay.
assuming.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you all want, yeah, because,
Any objection?
I do wanna make sure that there's consensus there, because we are gonna have to have a new agreement with the county on that, so we'll have a resolution at some point and give them the direction to proceed with that initial estimate work for us. All right.
I think they want to sit back down and go over the whole intersection layout again before they proceed with any replacement.
Okay,
But also on the table is a water main is going down Village Road, so that may delay things. I'll find out tomorrow. I have a pre-con meeting tomorrow,
okay.
but it's going the entire length from Shunpike to Spring Valley. So,
Okay, well,
They have 3 times.
yeah.
Didn't they just put in a water line?
On Shunpike, but now they're going from Shunpike, Shunpike, all the way down Green Village to Spring Valley. So the first leg is Britton Road to Spring Valley, and then 2025, we're gonna come back and do Britton to Shunpike.
but they did just pave that not too long ago, so.
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
clearly paved it, so I was thinking they just laid
And
the
it was
water
slated to
pipe
be
down there.
repaved in 2024, so
Mm,
that's coming too.
okay,
The only item listed under police is the fiber loop bid,
Okay.
for resolution. While John's here, I know Mary, you had a question about that, you know, as far as the bids and what changed, that we got them,
Yeah.
under budget, so John, could you come up and just address that, please?
sure. I was just wondering from the original bid specs, what did we change to finally get them, in, you know, in the budget?
Well, a couple of things. First, we kind of stepped back, because when we first got the grant, we started to have a little scope creep. And so we started to look at incorporating all our wastewater facilities into it versus what the initial grant was. So that was, you know, one revision that was made. We did meet with, you know, after we met with one of the bidders after the first time we bid, and just frankly asked them what they felt would bring the cost down, and they recommended a different alignment of how we would go. Even though it's slightly longer, they suggested that we keep off of Shunpike and other locations, that they thought it would be less expensive if we take this route. So they gave us some guidance on what they thought would work. And then lastly, we were completely taking a stab at the way the bid is set up. We got a price to design it, because it's a design-build project, a cost to construct it, and then we also have an allowance for Verizon and JCP&L to modify their poles to allow room for this new wire to be hung on their poles. And so that's kind of a number, is a bit of an estimate, a guesstimate per se, because you really need to get into the design before you actually do that. And so speaking with the one you know, vendor, you know, you thought that we were a bit over conservative on what we put in for that allowance for that. So that reducing that allowance, you know, really brought us right to where the grant is. So we do have some liability, frankly, because until the design is done and then we get those firm numbers from JCP and Verizon, we really know what that cost is. You know, we have $200,000 allocated for that. It could be less, it could be more, but that's something that we're not going to know until the design is done, the design is forwarded to JCP and Verizon, and they'll give us a firm number at that point. So it took us a couple of bids to get to this point, but we're there, and we're slightly below the grant amount. So I can only say that once the design is done, we go and we get the numbers from Verizon. We may have to modify the alignment or even reduce the alignment and go back to the grant and say, you know, we can only do this much at this point in time, can we break it up into phases? And so we may have to take that step. We hope we don't. Hopefully we can go forward. You know, the one vendor that we spoke to in the very beginning, who actually helped write the scope of work and gave us the preliminary numbers, they ultimately didn't bid on the project. And so, you know, we were really relying on their numbers, and their numbers were low. And you know, we found that after the fact that vendor couldn't bid public work, he couldn't get the bonding requirements, and he wasn't, so he's more of a service versus doing this. And so so our grant was very aggressive, you know, that we asked for just the amount that we needed. You know, we don't have much fluff in the funding.
Chief and I have a call with the grant program manager tomorrow. So one of the questions is because we're gonna embark on design, and the design costs are supposed to be paid for under the grant, but if the design costs end up, you know, we pay them out, but then we find out that the costs for construction are exceeding what we have left in the grant, we don't want to be in a situation where then we have to, you know, eat up the costs ourselves, or then find more money to make the project complete. So we want to have this call tomorrow, and hopefully have that information for you before the next meeting.
Okay. So in terms of putting in, because the whole idea was to put in some of the additional rears or, you know, for safety measures and that, so that's not compromised by the rerouting or?
No.
Yeah.
It's still gonna cover the necessary grant that we applied for.
Yeah.
We can build off what we've started. After this project is done, we can continue to build off of it. We're building an infrastructure. But, you know, we're just trying to make it fit within the grant at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Good. Thank you.
Should I stick around?
Yes, but actually, John, before you, Glenn on the tax revale.
Okay, that's right. I think I
No,
may.
you just stepped
Coming
out.
in.
That's fine.
Thank you.
You just stepped out. So, John.
Yeah.
Keep speaking in too.
Oh, I think he's right here. Do you want me
Yeah,
to
you might
just
just,
wait?
sorry, well, would you, John,
Yeah,
do you
that's
mind,
fine.
or?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Here he is.
Not at all.
Sorry about that.
John knows.
I thought I was gonna get favors from the chief and Debbie, because they were like negotiating with me to speak really fast, and then I'm out, and then they said, well,
Maybe that's about, you
you
know,
pulled it.
we can kick you under the leg, but then start going with the questions. So.
Fine. Move on.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How's everybody tonight?
Good.
thank you.
Nice to see everybody come in.
I don't know if anybody's a Met fan, but
Yes.
we're about, it's 7-2. They're winning. Yes.
You're a Mets fan?
Just get the hair
We were joking about it before the meeting. Glenn's here because of the upcoming tax reval. What we've got on the agenda for the next meeting is to authorize that bid. So again, I know Mayor, you wanted to kind of repeat the message for the benefit of the public, so that's why Glenn's here to address the next steps of the process. They provide us with bid specs that Tiana and Nick are reviewing, and there's also a time for you guys to, not that we need them for the authorization, but we're gonna, want any input or feedback from you as to anything you want in the bid specs that is unique or different. So Glenn, why don't you talk about the timeline again, or just briefly, and the main points of the bid specs.
But before you begin, I will tell you, we can't over-communicate, because I had a nice chat with somebody at the Taste of Chatham event yesterday, which was fabulous. I definitely recommend it. The Chamber of Commerce, Chatham Chamber of Commerce coordinated it. But I had a discussion, and they didn't realize that the folks come into your house to do the revamp. Like, this was a surprise. A lot of people have never gone through this experience. And,
but they would know that once we notice cars and mailers will go out. I mean, they will.
But that's why it's good for people, and they, to get a timeline when this is all going to occur. Yeah, thank you.
Did you tell them to tune in?
Well, where we're at in the process right now is our maps have been submitted to the Division of Taxation. Division received them, I think, September 11th, and they have 45 business days in which to review the maps and get back to the township with any requested changes or necessary changes to the tax map. And then it's just, as long as the township engineer is very responsive in making the changes, we should be on schedule to hopefully have the maps done before the end of this year. That was the game plan when we started out. Because the process cannot start until the maps are approved.
What kind of feedback do you get on the map?
Excuse me?
What kind of feedback would they send on the map? I mean,
A lot.
Yeah, believe it or not, the thickness of the lines on the map. Every exempt property has to be designated, it's exempt, and you know, if it's a volunteer fire department, they want it noted on the map, things of that nature. So they go through with a fine-tooth comb, and so
Okay.
it's a process. Sometimes it is just about the thickness of the lines on the map.
And sometimes it's which reviewer you get. So,
Yeah, okay.
So then I had put together some proposed revaluation specs or proposed contract, and I emailed it to the attorney at the Z. And so I took the standard state specs, which are very bare bones, and I added a lot of things to it that I think would be important for Chatham Township to have. And I think, you know, the next step would be, you know, once they review it, is to get everybody's input, and if there's anything else that they would request in the contract, now would be the time to have that discussion.
So I know I sent one thing in, but did anybody have, before I make my comments, anybody have any comments on the specifications in terms of what we're requesting the reval company? Assessor? What do they call it?
Well, the revaluation company.
The revaluation company, in terms of
Would
their
be
scope of work. Because the only comment I had was, I noticed it said, that the residents would be provided their, reassessment, their new assessment, November.
Correct.
And then they have till the end of the year to coordinate a meeting if, I guess, they disagree with that assessment.
Yes, and those dates are from the state statute.
Really?
Yes.
That's
And if-
terrible. So could you tell the people that, so is it the beginning of November or whenever they deliver in November?
The exact date.
Because people then, over the holidays, are trying to, you know.
I know, unfortunately, the deadline for the revaluation does fall right in the middle of the holidays.
Okay. Well, we could push them to get it out earlier, even if the technical deadline is.
Well, we have, I believe, in order to mail valuation letters earlier than that November date, we have to get approval by the Morris County Board of Taxation.
Interesting.
Is it that window to submit notice or to sit down, schedule a meeting? What is that window for? Because it's just a file notice, and that is a little more palatable than if you got to do something more substantive.
Said something about scheduling a
Yeah.
meeting with the
Yes,
reval
I-
company, yeah.
So by May. Typically, according to the state statutes, the standard contract, valuation letters can be mailed after November 10th.
Can be.
Yes. They don't have to go out on the 10th, they can go out anytime, but, and then we want to try to conclude the informal meetings by mid-December. So essentially, people will have about a month to contact the firm if they have any questions about the proposed valuation, and they'll be able to come in and meet with a representative of the firm to discuss the proposed assessment before it gets finalized.
Based on your experience, what do you typically expect in terms of number of folks who are going to contest and take this action question?
Surprisingly, it's a low percentage overall. I can't give you an exact number, but
Yeah,
it's.
are we talking tens, hundreds?
We'll probably get a couple hundred people that would want to call and set up an informal meeting.
So
then
But
he
if-
means the assessor's coming back to look, because it's something like, you know, they said there's 4 bedrooms and there's only 3 or something of that, is that what they?
Well, there'll be an informal meeting with a representative of the firm here within the municipality. And then if there's any questions as to the data that's being relied upon to come up with that proposed assessment, then it may cause a reinspection of the property, but not in all cases.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing they'll do when they sit down with a representative is to go over the information that they're being assessed for. And that's why it's so crucial to actually do an interior inspection of the properties, because we want to make sure that we have the most accurate information in order to have an accurate assessment. If the firm doesn't get in, we're still required to set an assessment on that property. So typically what they would do is have to estimate the interior information based on surrounding homes. If it's, say, a home that's built in the 70s, they're most likely going to assume the kitchen's renovated, the baths are renovated, the basement's finished, the attic's finished. So
You need
it's
permits too, right? Permit data.
well, they'll have
Yeah.
permit data as well, but you know, it's to everyone's benefit to cooperate and allow an inspection, so we make sure that we have, you know, the most accurate information possible.
Now, if a resident isn't home, or they have been denied for some reason, sickness or whatever the reason is, before the informal meeting, do they have a chance to have the evaluator back?
Yes, and in the proposed contract, I mean, there are some standard steps in the state specs. So there'll be mailings that get sent out to all the taxpayers, notifying them of the pending revaluation and the procedures for the inspection. And then the initial visit is typically conducted unannounced. So they'll go to a home. If somebody's home, they'll introduce themselves, they'll show their identification, and if it's convenient for the homeowner at that time, they'll do the full inspection and be done with that particular property. If it's an inconvenient time or the homeowner's not there, they're going to leave a card at the home notifying a date and a time when they're going to return. And then if that time is inconvenient for the taxpayer, there'll be a phone number on that card that they can call and set up a more specific or more convenient appointment. So if the firm doesn't hear from them, they'll go back at that particular time, and if the homeowner's there, they'll do the inspection. If they're not, then they're going to leave another card that says, you know, you need to call and schedule an appointment. And then I have in the proposed contract that once all of the field work is essentially complete, I want the firm to mail a letter to any property where we didn't gain access to, notifying them that they've got a final notice that if the property is not inspected, then it's going to be estimated at its highest, most reasonable potential.
And because of this process, that's why you have the low percentage of people coming out to challenge, or to ask questions. I mean, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm just making a comment.
You know, and once the value notices are out, we can have the firm share as much information as the township would like, but typically I like that if they post a listing of sales on their website. So when somebody gets an assessment of $2 million in on a certain street, they'll be able to look at the sales and they'd be able to compare the sales to what their assessment is. And a lot of times that satisfies people and they don't find the need to have an informal meeting.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? You'd like municipalities to post sales within the township?
Well, either on the municipal website or on the revaluation website. I think it's helpful once the value letters go out that the list of the sales that were used to develop the assessments are shared with the public.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how we work, I understand now.
Okay.
Gotcha.
There's no concern with it.
No,
Public information.
I was thinking he was going to, he's saying the sales.
He thought we
that
were
used
Google
for
and
the
we were gonna develop some sort of new technology here. No, it's a
I
list.
was wondering how we were going
It's a
to
list technology.
generate a list of all sales of property and when it was gonna be from, but that's not what it is.
I think the county cats a record too, so.
Yeah, but we do
pull
have
it
that
down.
information technically with the Mod 4, but yeah,
Yes.
that's not what we're doing. We're just using a sample that we're
Right.
providing the sample that the firm used.
That was gonna be
Yes.
my comment, that people could just go to the Mod 4, but I understand how it is.
Well, it'll be a lot easier for taxpayers to be
Yes.
able to go to the appraisal firm's website and see a list of all the sales.
Yes.
And if we choose to, a list of all of the assessed values in town as well.
Okay. Great.
So in terms of time frame, as we can go out to bid once the specifications are completed. And we can go out to bid prior to the maps being
Really?
approved, but we can't start any work until the maps are approved. But there are some things we can do, like we can get an introductory letter together, things of that nature that while we wait for the map approval.
Okay. So I guess if there's no other input on the specifications, then we're good to move forward.
So we'll have a resolution to authorize the bid, we'll draft a notice with legal and Glenn and Greg to just make sure all the timelines for the bidding process are sorted out with, paper, publication, receipt, and all that stuff, and
Yeah, we'll take
Yeah.
we'll take a look at the specs and give them any comments that we have. I don't anticipate having many, but.
so like either December or January, we'll be making an award.
That work?
Okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful.
Unless we also get no bids for this one.
I mean, it is gonna be an issue, there are only a couple active revaluation firms in the state of New Jersey right now. And if you look at all the ratios in the state of New Jersey, about probably 75% of the state of New Jersey needs a revaluation right now, because the
Yeah.
residential market has really affected all the ratios throughout the state.
Okay. Wonderful. I think we're good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for coming in.
Sure. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Glenn. Go Jets. Oh, Mets, sorry.
Just prove your point, Mark.
They can find the head coach, so not a lot of going.
Okay, you're up, John.
Okay, there's two things listed on the agenda just for discussion. I did provide a proposal for preparing cost estimates for the three primary improvements that we want to undertake at the plant. And the objective is to work with the operator, come up, make sure that we're in agreement with the general concept and how the improvements is going to be, and then ultimately come up with a cost estimate. So that ultimately the next step is to, proceed with a loan application with IBAC and proceed with the design. So the intent is this a $5 million or a $10 million project, and what is it going to look like? To just kind of get into the weeds of the details with the operator, and make sure that are we going to change technology? We're going to keep the same technology, and go over those pros and cons. Pull Z in at the end, and where we're going with it, and just kind of it's just more of a scoping project.
That one is funded with the last capital budget that we put together for WPC. We put in some money for specifically this, so, but the actual funding, as John said, that's going to the IBank, because and that's scope of, we're talking millions at that point, so.
Okay. Any questions or concerns with moving forward on John producing the?
It would be a resolution for
Oh,
the
the
next
resolution,
meeting to
okay.
authorize that,
Yeah.
to award that contract.
Got it.
No issues there? No issues?
No questions? No concerns? Okay.
Next one is the senior center lighting project.
Yeah, we've went out to bid for replacing the lights at the senior center, and get a very, there was a lot of interest. We did have one bidder that did make a mistake, and he did notify us within the statute requirements that they are entitled to be pulled out of the bid if they made a mistake. And the numbers that they had were ridiculously low.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they were thinking. But the next responsive bidder was a reasonable price, and so certainly would recommend that we move forward with an award and get the project done.
Great. Now, I had sent a question. I was swamped today. I did not get to see if there was an answer.
I will double check and get back to you on it.
Okay.
But yeah, we are within the budget, I think.
Okay, that's what
you
I
had
wanted to
asked.
check.
Yeah, that was my first question too.
Yes, we are within, yeah, we are within the budget.
Okay. Great. Any other questions on the senior center lighting?
All right. Any other questions on my report while I'm here?
Was there something I think we said we were gonna touch on in your report, John, or no?
It was for the
was the
grant
police,
with the police.
Okay.
Yep, that was the third item.
Okay.
Anything else, Steve, that you
No,
touch on?
no, that's it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Okay, we've been all over the map on this agenda, so.
Off to
Back
admin, back up.
Back to admin, okay.
We'll start from the top now that they're all gone. The two ordinances, they can start off with those, Mayor. There's public comment and feedback from the governing body from our last conversation on parks, fields, and rules and regs. There was a conversation of the golf language, so our attorney put together some language for your review and consideration, whether that achieves your wishes.
You can see it on section E if you're looking at the actual ordinance.
I closed everything down, so I'm trying to find it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you had the golf, oh, and then we had, I'm fine on L, just to jump to this real quick, the resident who recommended the smoking, vaping, and tobacco products, and then we're still defining it, I'm fine with that, just for clarification, that's not a big
You're fine with making the change that she recommended?
Yeah,
Okay. I just wanna make sure I understood.
yeah, and that should, thinking through, we're in workshop, so this is the time to make those kind of changes.
Yes, absolutely.
So going back to E, play or practice golfing unless such facility is specific, that's prohibited, play or practice golfing unless such facility is specifically designated for such activity by the township, or use of plastic practice wiffle balls, golf balls, not within any active public play area, apparatus area, athletic field, or recreation enclosure or building. So that's to say, golfing is, if you can't golf, or if you use wiffle balls, you can use those within, as long as it's not in these active areas.
So you can't golf unless it is in a designated area, designated by the township, or you're using the practice wiffle balls outside of those areas.
Okay.
And I mirrored the language, those, similar to what we did with the animals, you'll see it's the active public play area, it's like that same, cause it's the same concept, right? You just don't want people hitting balls in that area where it's, active. And ironically, I was just telling Z, ever since this, I noticed on my way into work in the morning, there's a guy in one of the fields by my house actually practicing golf all the time.
You should invite you, Mayor.
I should. They better check their ordinance. I have no idea what kind of balls he's using. I don't.
Yeah. Now, I did hear from somebody who was more so concerned about the clubs, that it's fine if they're using a wiffle ball, and but that the, swinging of the club, which, to me, it's like a kid swinging a bat. It's,
That's dangerous when a kid's swinging a bat.
Wait, is that correct? So it is, no person shall use plastic balls not within any active? Shouldn't it be, no person shall use within any active?
Well, it's hard because because we're already doing the exception, so it's an exception to an exception.
We've got multiple negatives going.
Yeah, maybe I make it a second sentence, honestly. So you're not allowed to play or practice golf unless such facility is specifically designated for such activity by the township. So this is still, or use a plastic practice wiffle golf balls not within any, maybe I say outside any active, maybe that would be a little more clear.
Why don't you just put a period after township for activity by the township?
Yeah.
Period, and then just say, this excludes.
Use of plastic.
Got it.
Yeah, that would help.
Yep.
Get that.
Or exclude.
We'll work on that to make it,
Yeah.
I can see where.
Since I need to send this to the paper, if you could get me that tomorrow morning, that would be,
But we still gotta introduce this, right?
assuming that it's, assuming that.
Right, we'd have to, cause I think where we leave off.
Yeah, no, we
I think
didn't, we didn't
have to-
introduce it, we still have to
Yeah,
introduce
so I think
it.
we still have to introduce.
Oh, yeah, so we have the amended, we have the introduced ordinance, this would be amending what's already been introduced.
So we did introduce it already.
We introduced the one without this amendment.
That's correct.
We have the original, so we're gonna have to either vote the other one down, or wait, that one was adopted? I'm trying to
We
remember.
tabled it.
No,
We
that
tabled
was,
it.
yeah.
It was tabled, so that's pretty much dead, that's.
Yeah,
not
we can
the-
make it in.
Well, I guess you could vote on the amendments and then, vote to adopt.
Okay.
But I guess we have to do all of that at the next meeting, and the question becomes whether or not they're substantive, and you're just voting on the amendments, or you're voting on the amendments and the adoption. And I think we've gone through it enough that I'd like to keep it clean, and we just vote on the amendments and then do the publication for the November meeting.
Okay, so next meeting we'll vote?
Vote on the amendment,
Okay,
like, kinda like a reintroduction, yeah, it's
Okay.
basically a reintroduction.
so rather than amending it tonight, we'll, reintroduce at the October 22nd meeting?
Yeah, I wasn't under the impression we were doing any action.
Unless you wanna take action on it tonight, but I think you could leave it, so we have the full.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that way I have the,
Outlined
yeah, I have the language for you.
Yeah, we gotta clean up that language. so.
Yep,
Okay.
Okay. And that was it on that one, right?
yes.
Great.
All right, next one, indoor construction. I just want to clarify, I mean, the resident's not here, but also for the benefit of the public, we're not actually dealing with a noise ordinance, right? This is a construction prohibition ordinance, not a noise ordinance. Noise is a byproduct of the construction, but we're not tackling noise in this ordinance.
Yes.
Because the resident mentioning, decibels and all that's,
Yeah,
it's a
that's-
health matter and.
Oh, because it, because it raises other issues about, the weekend warrior, and if there's people in town who wanna do work on their own property, or they can't get, you got a dual working household, they can't get the plumber in except for the weekend, and, so, that you don't
Yeah.
wanna preclude that from happening, so I think that's why she started getting into
Yeah, no, I just wanted to
where it's
clarify.
disruptive.
I
As
believe,
opposed to-
people doing work on their own property is already exempted, and the ordinance
Correct.
is, just about contractors doing the work.
I mean, the same concern applies, but this is only for contractors, this is not for you doing work on your own.
Yeah, same thing though, if.
It still applies,
Yeah,
yes.
if I'm not home, nobody's home except for the weekends, and it's the only time we can get the plumber in.
Well,
It's
it's
on a
only
Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Right, Sunday and holidays.
Yeah.
Sunday on Saturday.
So,
This is the fall.
I'm not, I guess the question is whether or not it's a big enough concern to place another restriction on people's ability to
Well, that's the
work their
discussion, yeah.
property.
so that's the question, is whether or not there's an interest in changing the construction law ordinance to have, to include indoor construction in the exclusion, or some form of it. I just don't know what that looks like, that's the problem on that.
Well, construction versus repair, or, because that would be the
Right.
emergency on a Sunday, right, for a plumber.
Well, I think also emergencies are exempted.
Yes,
It's
that's
right.
what I mean, so it kind of.
In the ordinance as it exists right now, which we
Yeah.
weren't amending
Right.
originally at all, it says, let me pull it up so I can find. So it says, no construction or contractor activity shall take place out of doors on property within the township of Chatham on Sundays or holidays, provided that in the event of an emergency unique to the property or to the community at large, this regulation shall not apply. So it already says out of doors, so in order to make it subject to indoors, we would just delete that language, but it's a matter of whether or not you wanna do that. So drafting wise, it wouldn't be difficult, it's just up to you, policy wise.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's where the noise factor was coming in, because it wasn't, and then I understand we have a separate noise ordinance, so if they're over 50, 60 decibels, whether or not you can get somebody out to actually measure that is a whole other story. So it came down to when somebody's doing interior work and it becomes disruptive. But, you know, we also don't have a pile of people here asking for that exemption, so do we wanna stir the pot?
You can take it incrementally, I mean, meaning like if it does become an issue, I mean, because we do, again, there is still a noise ordinance that does apply, so, you know, I know we've gotten, right, we've gotten complaints about an air conditioner on weekends, and our health officer has come out.
Yeah, air conditioners, generators, barking dogs.
So we do get those complaints, and the inspector has come out on a weekend, so it's not like it's not doable under the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
And-
Okay.
And ultimately, someone has to arbitrate whether or not something is disruptive or not. You know, it can't just be. That's my issue with this construction on Sundays and holidays, because there's so many things. I mean, there's emergency, and then there's a repair, right? I mean, and then there's this idea of, well, if someone's working quietly indoors, painting, are we looking to stop that? I don't, you know, and construction on Sundays or holidays, that would be stopped, right? Because you'd have a commercial van, I just don't know if that's necessary, but I think nobody should have the peaceful enjoyment of their property disrupted, and if we need to refer something about the noise ordinance, you know, to the Board of Health, I would be supportive of that, but not this.
Yeah.
You know, practically speaking, this is the kind of ordinance that would be enforced based on complaints, and if the work next door is quiet, neighbors aren't gonna know, so they're not gonna be calling the police to come out and.
Well, certain neighbors have other reasons too. Yeah.
But, yeah, by and large.
Yeah, by and large, that's correct. There are feuds though.
Okay, so it sounds like we're not interested in taking any action at this time.
So, what are we involved with this ordinance, and what are we doing here?
The
So
prior version
We
was already
adopted,
adopted.
so there's no further
Nothing
action.
else.
So
Nothing's
we're
going
gonna adopt it as
It's been adopted.
No, it's
You
been
adopted
adopted.
it.
The
Remember
previous
we-
change. So the previous change, how this
Just
all came
Juneteenth.
about
Yeah,
was just adding
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth to the holidays.
Oh, that's right, okay.
That was already adopted without this other change, so there was
we're
nothing
here,
more to
there's
do.
no more action.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on, discussion and action, 2 items. This one I think is fairly straightforward, electricity renewal auction. We did do this last year, my first time doing it here in Chatham. I've done these elsewhere, probably every town. And that is a reverse auction for our electricity needs. Only municipal accounts, this has nothing to do with residential. So last year we did it for our municipal street lighting. We did only a 1-year term, that expires next month. We only did a 1-year term last year because that was the better rate as opposed to anything longer term, and uncertainty with the markets. Our consultant said just stick to 1 year. So that's expiring. And then we've got our other municipal electricity accounts, which are under a different tariff rate. That's the lighting for all our buildings and parks, fields, so on and so forth. That expires also coming up, so now we're gonna do them all together and go out to auction. We don't know what those rates look like. I will have, as I did last year, a report on what the auction looks like with a recommendation from our consultant, but we have to execute that contract within a certain time period, essentially the same day. So at the next meeting, what I'm proposing is a resolution that authorizes us to go out to auction and authorizes us to execute the best rate that me and the consultant think works best for the township. Otherwise, we can do it separately, where on the 22nd you authorize the auction, and then we would go out to auction at the next meeting in November on the same day of our meeting, so that way you can see the rates then as well and deliberate on those. But honestly, not much to deliberate on these things. You get a good rate, you take it. It's just a matter of the term, and we do have a very good consultant on this stuff. So
you to make the expense higher, that's for sure.
Yeah. So if that's okay, then I think there was a draft resolution on what that would look like. So we'd be putting the strike price and all that stuff in there and fill in the blank. I will have the report for you though, for the energy auction from that day.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Okay. And now for the exciting one. Circular litter regulations. Our environmental commission had asked, requested that you consider some regulation on managing the litter that's created by circulars thrown in people's driveways without request. Committee McHugh, you're the liaison. I don't know if you want to say anything or tee it up.
Well, the fact of the matter is what we're searching for is some kind of opt-in, opt-out to maybe control some of that, because of not just the environmental commission, but actual neighbors have been complaining about it ending up in the streets. And so if we can come up with some form to do that, to enable that, that's what we're looking to do.
So I think to many of us, that's, you know, goes straight from the driveway to the recycle bin.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And some it sits, so.
Yeah, so, but there are, I guess, might be a lot of people that make use of the circle, we're talking about potentially an opt-out
Yes.
type of, and then our clerk would administer that, opt-out. Does that seem like something everybody would wanna pursue?
I'm not interested in pursuing that, and the reason is I think, you know, we have limited time and resources and energy, and I don't really want to put the staff or anyone into pursuing that, particularly with the Environmental Commission. We've talked about this in the past where, you know, we have a tree ordinance that applies to our residents and property owners, and it doesn't apply to us as a municipality. And so what the Environmental Commission here is seeking to do is make a regulation about private companies or somebody else who's, you know, distributing circulars. But we had already talked, and I thought it was unanimous that we'd asked them to look into a tree planting ordinance or something about tree replacement for trees that we cut down on municipal property. So I would like to refocus back onto things that we've already talked about and already discussed, rather than bringing up something, you know, new and trying to regulate something outside of our own control. We have something, you know, in that's well within our own control.
Well, this is actually, if I might, this is actually complaints that have come because of the residual and remaining papers, et cetera. And the environmental picked it up because typically the limited ones that have been passed around town are primarily in plastic bags. They sit in the rain, and in fact, it's mostly the other neighbors that are picking it up as they walk their dogs and the like. And so it's really just a nuisance, an ability to address what has become to some neighbors a nuisance. And for that reason, it's very simple. And if we execute something that allows some of the residents to opt out, if it becomes something that makes the issue and the nuisance evaporate. So that's the reason for it. It has nothing to do with you know, other ordinance or effective you know, pursuits of the Environmental Commission. And so certainly those will be pursued, but this is kind of a one-off and a very simple, I believe. And other towns have done that and created ordinance. What we want to do is create a situation where it's an ordinance that is not too cumbersome, and it's easy for neighbors to say, hey, yeah, I don't want that coming to me anymore, and it's within that neighbor's right to opt out. That's all.
In terms of the work requirements, do you have another opt-out for solicitors? I mean, what does that entail?
So with solicitors and canvassers, people can sign up for a do not knock registry. So when would-be solicitors and canvassers go to the police to get those permits, the police in turn hands them the list, so that way these solicitors know what doors they're not allowed to knock on.
So likewise, you would maintain a list, and we know this isn't a solicitor type situation where they come to you, but I guess if there's a complaint, at that point you just have to send the list to that entity that's sending out the circulars.
Assuming that I can get that information of
Yeah.
where they operate from.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue it's also a safety concern, because it is an indicator. I mean, we always make sure neighbors get it for us, but sometimes, people don't think to do that. But it is an indicator that nobody's home when it's left behind, through the weekend. So,
Yeah, I mean, the same would apply to, Chinese food menus or any restaurant food menus, that would be left behind. And famously, you live in an apartment complex and those things get distributed. So I think you are a bit cherry picking a certain problem, a certain issue. Look, I don't completely oppose it. I would be open to it. I'm just saying that we only have a certain amount of attention and a certain amount of priority, and this, we've already discussed the issue of, we have a green policy, which has some nice aims to it, but it completely excluded trees. And we do have a history of cutting down trees and then not replacing them in our township. And so I'm just wondering where that went, what happened to that priority? And it was discussed not a week ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, we're talking several months ago, and nothing's come back, but now something's come back on regulating other people rather than regulating ourselves.
I mean, I'll ask Committeeman McHugh to take it back to the environmental committee. It's not the topic that's at hand right now, and I will say I've gotten more complaints about the circulars on the driveway than I have about what the township's cutting down and not replacing or is replacing, because there is, there is replacement efforts. But, the question at hand is whether or not we want to pursue circular litter regulation to allow residents to opt out. Is there an objection? I think I have one noted. Is there an objection otherwise to pursuing that?
Not here, obviously.
Okay, and you had a sample draft from the environmental commission?
Yes, they had given
Just
some, but
language,
it's
yeah.
got some
Yeah,
language.
we'll work with that
Yes.
and give you something
Okay,
to review and perhaps comment on.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And if you could take the other one back too.
Yeah, but I think that, actually, to comment further, Mark, if you don't mind, is that, that is something that's not forgotten about, and it is something that the Environmental Commission is discussing. So, to your point, it is something that is a priority and interest to further. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Is there anything else there?
That is it, Mayor. I think all we have left is that return to executive session.
I have a couple of questions under administration.
That's everything? Oh, okay. So I was looking at the list. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, my first one is about the website. We had, still have a notice up on the website about its, that, be patient, this is new. That was a project that seemed to me that the proposal came in February, call it March, anyway. It was supposed to be a 6-week project. We're more than 6 months on. So I would like can you give us an update on what the end of that looks like?
Yeah, the scope of the original scope of that project is completed. It was completed within the time frame.
Okay, so what's going on with the website right now is that there's still that message, saying, hey, we're updating, with us. The website, I've had many residents reference the fact that the website no longer has, older ordinances or older resolutions, that it's missing information that used to be there. So we seem to have, if anything, reduced the amount of information that's on the website.
But that's why the note is there. If somebody's looking for something, they can just email the clerk or myself and we get it to them, because we're in the process of a lot of data that needs to be transferred over. And we're renaming files, updating meta tags, and reorganizing it, so it's not just a data dump. So that's part of the process.
So it's not complete.
The original scope, as I said, the original scope is complete. What was
So
not-
the
not-
vendor-
So the original scope was what didn't include to have the same functionality as our previous website?
Oh no, the functionality is there. It's the data has to be migrated over.
Seems
So you're
like
reviewing
semantical.
content and cleaning it up.
Correct. That's what we're doing with all the pages. That's why the notice is there, because the previous website had data all over the place, duplicates, files not named correctly, not easy to be located. So now that we've got the shell, the website is all organized, a good file management system on there, now we're migrating all the data, renaming files, putting them where they belong, so that way they are more logical and easier to find.
Okay.
Mr. Shahadi, do you have I know this is the impossible question, any idea when a lot of that data will be updated and loaded into the format?
It's a work in progress. I gotta work with Greg on that one. Right now, I've prioritized the mailing list, because we're putting, I think I mentioned that is a frequent request and a need for the township in terms of public relations and communication. So that's been a priority right now. So it's nearly done. Just a couple more modifications need to be made on the back end, and hopefully by the end of this month we can roll that out and launch that. And then we can focus, there's some other cleanup, things like that.
Right.
I've bumped that down on the list because of some more functionality issues. It's not that hard for somebody to email if they need an ordinance or resolution, and get that done.
Yeah, regarding ordinances, as long as we're updating our code book like we should be, then that's sort of a moot point, because the codification already would include any ordinances that are more than a year old. And then as far as resolutions, that's a very, very, very time-consuming project that I could probably chip away at a little bit at a time over the summer when things are slow, but that's the kind of thing that if we're gonna budget to have a deputy clerk at some point, then that's something that they could work on.
Meaning this year's resolutions being up on the site, is that what you're referring to?
Well, it's, one thing for me during the current year, every time we have a meeting to do, the, 5 to 10 resolutions per meeting. But, if we're gonna do, a particular year where there could be 250, 300 resolutions, that's, every resolution takes time. That's time away from OPA requests, time away from committee minutes, planning board minutes,
Yeah.
Board of Health minutes, all the things that I statutorily have to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they do, I would just say that, perfect can't be the enemy of good. And, we had a resource and now we have nothing for the public. And I don't know why we would even invest an enormous amount of time when we had something, we could just take that same data and push it in. I mean, that's what I would definitely encourage, but.
I mean, that's what somebody who doesn't know how it works on the back end would say, and that's what I've explained is, it's a process, there's a lot that goes into it, and it will be done.
Getting the old resolutions back up, I would have to individually scan every resolution from a particular year, individually post every resolution from a particular year. And one particular year, that could be a 3-month project.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's only if the SQL database from the previous, WordPress site wasn't
Wasn't a WordPress site.
wasn't available.
It wasn't a
The
WordPress
CMS.
site, like I said.
Whatever SQL was driving that CMS, okay? How about that?
Okay,
That's
can
fine.
we,
Okay.
Workshop
let's
docs,
move on.
Turn into
workshop
a
docs,
The-
we have,
The question was answered, what, did you have
yeah, workshop
anything else?
docs, so today's meeting, we had talked about this several times, having workshop docs, something available for the public about the topics that we're discussing. So the topics that we're discussing, we have an agenda here, but none of the reports or information that we have in the background is available to the public on the website, and that's including, tonight's meeting, I just looked. So, nothing says, hey, mom and dad don't want you knowing what's in the checkbook or what we're really talking about, like not showing somebody, what's around. Now, I don't think that the public necessarily needs access to every single document that we're looking at, but I do think it would be good if we could share something with the public in terms of documents for these meetings.
So I believe I explained at a prior meeting that under OPRA, draft and deliberative documents are exempt from Open Public Records Act. So if we want to do something contrary to OPRA, then I would need a clear policy from this committee to give me direction what you would and would not. And then there would still be certain items that would not be posted, because if it's,
Sure,
a personal record, like
fully
if we're,
agree with you.
like there'd have to be some discretion what would be and would not be appropriate.
Right. But clearly, to me, nothing is not discretion, it's just nothing.
Typically resolutions and ordinances for the regular meetings are, posted, since that's something that's gonna have action. But, if it's a personnel resolution, hiring a new employee or appointing board members, we usually withhold that because it's, a private matter until it's ready to be public.
Yeah, I wouldn't want work in progress documents, because it's useless for residents. I mean, it's a waste of their energy to kind of review stuff that's not even really, I mean, we revised things right here repeatedly. Better for them to participate when there's public hearings for them to participate.
Now, to use an example, in the clerk's manual, we are specifically told not to distribute draft minutes until they're reviewed and approved by the governing body, because releasing those too early would just wind up creating confusion. And sometimes we've had that happen in the past with different versions of draft ordinances floating about town, and people come to the microphone and start railing about something that was 3 versions ago. So my personal preference is wait until it's in a reasonably final form, especially with ordinances and resolutions, before you go live with it.
So I'll give you a very fast example, not to belabor this, but just how about note sale? We discussed note sale. Somewhat public documents could really be available elsewhere to the public. Makes no sense that we wouldn't be able to provide something like that, right, to the public?
I guess what's the intent of providing it before the meeting versus discussing it in the meeting with context? What's the benefit for?
Transparency.
We're transparent when we're discussing it.
Okay. We'll have to, I would say let's visit each item, before the meeting. If we see stuff, we could ask if it could be posted, if there's any reason to preclude it from being posted. I want to be able to give residents information, but I don't want to waste their time with stuff that's not relevant. But the police reports, those are public records. I don't know why we can't post those. Some of the reports I love, we can see what the public works, all the things they do. I think it's great for the residents to see that. The construction reports, so there's a lot of good stuff there that I think just evidences all the great work that people are doing. So,
I'm agreeing.
So is there consensus as to the fact that you want us to publish the monthly reports, the departmental reports? Is that what I'm hearing, or do you wanna-
is there any reason not to? I'm comfortable with it. Does anybody else have any objection? I think it'd be great to publish the monthly reports.
Yeah, that's fine. We need some direction. I mean, like Greg said, a lot of the towns follow that, because it's deliberative. Until you discuss them and there's context to it, they don't want to release it, but some towns do, so it's.
I'm talking about the reports that talk about what was
Right.
done. So like
Yep.
the clerk's report talks about what was done the
Right.
last. I'm not talking about some of the speculative stuff or the,
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we need some guidance, some direction.
Well, like, what about the engineer's report? I mean, his gets into issues to discuss, I think the clerk, maybe the tax collector, those are a little more, fact-based.
Yeah.
The engineer, Z and I talked about, our office is gonna start giving you reports, certainly we can't publish those.
Right.
Usually.
Engineering is one that just sticks to me as being a little bit of both, right? They identify issues to discuss, John will raise things that are, could we read it the way, he presents both, or he gives a recommendation. I don't know how you feel about those.
What is customary or best practice?
So the best practice is.
I don't
if it's-
see the point of putting out information that may or may not have value. I'm an advocate of transparency. I think all these meetings are official record. Everything is discussed, things that we're formally taking positions on. And to the extent that a member of the public would like additional information, I don't see why there's any issue with having them request information which can be timely distributed to the person requesting the information. I don't think there's any obfuscation on it. Having said that, I'm not sure it makes sense as a best practice to put everything out there. And certainly some things may be prudent to not provide because it's a working product or it's draft form, or it may have sensitive information that council may deem potentially problematic. So then we're in the question of, well, gee, who's gonna make the determination on what's put out there and what's not? I think that provides more complications.
And it sort of has a little bit of in some cases, a chilling effect, because then, you become hesitant to put something on the agenda or include it, if you're making that discretion, and then it's, well, why wasn't this included? then, you know, there's conspiracy theorists about transparency, and, you know, if, there's something in there that, again, is so at its infancy in terms of the process and the deliberation, now you get hysteria over something that, you know, like, take for example again, or the indoor construction, you know, that ordinance, we're not even, you know, brought up to discuss, but we're not moving ahead with it. So people don't always understand the process, and that can turn into more issues than it'll benefit anybody.
Yeah, and I think the dialogue that just transpired with regard to that particular issue is all, again, all on the record. I think we've sort of communicated what each member of the committee may or may not be, you know, opines as far as that's concerned. And again, as elected officials, we avail ourselves to the public. So to the extent, again, any member of the public would desire more information, clarification, they can certainly, you know, reach out to us, reach out to you, or the clerk, and provide that information. Again, I would like to lean on best practices. What was customarily done, or is being done across municipalities, and I think there's some wisdom there as opposed to making a decision here, maybe even perhaps a policy in a vacuum. I would encourage kind of what's prudent, not for the, you know, the veil of transparency, just making a data dump. I think that does the public a disservice. There is organized and concerted dialogue here on the things that matter that we're, again, taking positions on, and there are documents provided to us for review and consideration. And if the public would like more information, I think that's a request can be made. I'm not sure it's good practice to just put everything out there, whether it's in, certainly if it's in draft form, but I do in fact believe that provides confusion.
I'll give you a perspective that part of what you publish for in advance of meetings serves as a way for people to determine whether or not to come to the meeting and speak their mind on an issue. And that's why it occurred to me that if you wanted to provide something in advance, those reports, absent some of the other backup documents and the specifics, the reports may provide enough information. Let's take the construction one, for example. So if we provided information about that, potentially we could have contractors here at the meeting explaining to you why that may or may not be a good idea, and that would inform your decision on whether or not to pass such an ordinance. Without giving them the little bit of information that you may get from a report, they're not gonna know enough, I mean, assuming they go on the website and do everything else, they're not gonna know enough to come here and express their opinion about a certain item. I think I'm conservative when it comes to Oprah and all things public documents, and I have the municipality's best interests at heart always, but I see some merit to including the reports to provide a little bit of context for people to be able to gauge whether or not it's an issue that they need to come and either speak to you outside of the meeting or come to a meeting to express their opinion on, so that you can hear from residents about specific issues. Does it raise the issue of we need to look at those reports to determine sometimes they can't be, posted? Yeah, I think that is would have to be part of it if you decide to go that route. I just see there is some, in my opinion, merit to providing some of that information to make it so residents are able to make an informed decision about whether or not to come to the public meeting and participate.
It's a fair point. My position isn't necessarily one way or the other. I think it would be wise to look at what best practices are. Having said that, I'm still very much a student of the game, but my understanding was that's the purpose and definition of our workshop. Isn't the workshop supposed to provide a window into what is forthcoming in the next official committee meeting, right? Before decisions are made, before votes are cast, my understanding with the workshop was doing essentially that function, right? Providing some leading information as to what is being considered by the committee and what may or may not be decided upon at the subsequent committee meeting. Right?
Yes, I mean, and look at
So
how
this
it played
workshop
out,
by
you know, with the
definition,
resident.
I think is by design is supposed to, I think, address some of the concerns I think were voiced by the committee here, but, and I think we're doing a satisfactory job for what it's worth, but,
I mean, I would say if you guys want to look at municipalities' websites in the area, see which ones have workshop meetings and which ones are publishing that information and which ones aren't, and engage in there. I think we just do to what the clerk was saying, we need some clear parameters, right? Is it just the reports? Is it draft legislation? Is it, whether it's the email from the Environmental Commission on the circulars? Is it the information I got from the consultant on the renewals? Some of these things too, if we're getting information from other people, bids, proposals, things like that, they are reluctant to provide that stuff when it gets published and it's on the website forever. That's why I say sometimes it can have a chilling effect when you start putting all of that information out there, whether it's data, proposals, information, opinions. So we just need to know, we'll do what we want. We're not objecting to putting it on there, just want you to realize that, whether it's reports, tell us it's reports. If it's draft legislation, tell us that. If it's everything minus things that are privileged under legal or personnel, we need some parameters on that. So maybe that's something that is addressed in the bylaws for next year. You adopt the bylaws, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like we have the workshops, so we're getting stuff out to people. We have our ordinances, which have to have a public hearing. Where I find sometimes, based on my years in those seats, was the resolutions, if those weren't circulated in advance, it was hard to know what was included there. So, but I think it's when we take action. So the days that we're taking action, usually we put out the resolutions. I think for the most part. Sometimes they're missing until the last minute, and then maybe if we could have copies for anybody who attends, but I think, I do think a lot of that is covered.
I mean, I do think we try to put as much information in the title too. I mean, so that way if somebody is interested, they can always reach out and say, hey, give me some more information on the fiber loop bid. I mean, it's not like we're trying to hide the information. It's not like we're just saying, bid. We're not. We are putting enough information here. I think that somebody could look at it. If they've got an interest in it, they'll inquire.
Yeah. Okay. We didn't have our second hearing of citizens, right?
We have no one online, we have no one in the audience, so you can still do the formality of opening it, but sort of a moot point.
But I just have a few more questions under administration regarding recreation and Colony Pool.
Okay, did you send those in advance?
Yes.
Okay, could we make it snappy?
Okay. So the committee received Colony Pool information with revenue numbers for many years. And the revenue numbers for 2021 are not correlative to any of our data that the pool committee had received over for 2021 or previous reports from the pool committee or from this body. And Mr. Sciatti and I had a back and forth about correcting that, and it seemed to me that and he could speak for himself, but it seemed to me that the answer was we're not going to correct previous revenue numbers for past years. We're going to correct going forward. And so I think one thing is that I looked at the audit from 2021, which was accepted in 2022, which I think Mr. Choi, Mayor Ewald, and I all voted on. To accept the audit, which has a number of $279,000 of revenue from Colony Pool membership fees and dues. And that audit, which for the benefit of the public, of course, is our auditor, our accountants, the accounting staff, rather, our CFO, and many eyes are reviewing that. That's $279,000 is roughly $100,000 higher than what was reported to this committee. And the significance of that going forward, of course, is if you're a manager and you're a good manager, you're going to look at your data over a period of time. You're going to say, well, what direction are we going in and why? And when did we do the best and what happened then? And so, 2021 being here, the data that we received in their report makes it seem like it was somewhat of a ho-hum year. But actually, it was the greatest year that the Colony Pool has ever had recorded ever. And it has not been repeated. And so I think to, have such an egregious change there is really, it's significant. And I think when you're reflecting on Colony Pool numbers and you're thinking about, what changes we need to make to get back to something like what happened in 2021, you have to at least have a good baseline.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, I quickly went through that back and forth, and it seemed like from Mr. Shadi's answer that it was unclear, because you seemed to poll exactly what apparently was polled in the past, and there seemed to be some disconnect. Can I make a suggestion? Maybe we just include what revenue has been booked? So you have what you're dumping from the system, you've put in what revenue's booked, so.
I mean, the response I provided, Mayor, is these are an end of season report. So this is the end of season report for 2024. So the revision I'll make is just delete all the information prior to 2024. No other department is providing information going this far back. This was part of a report that in 2022, the same report template that in 2022, the pool manager at that point prepared. I don't know how he came to those numbers, and it just carried on. So we're just adding the numbers. The thing to do is delete those numbers.
Oh, so you didn't pull some retro?
No, we didn't pull in. The same numbers that are here are the same numbers that were in the 2023 report, the same numbers that were in the 2022 report. It's just adding a column. So like this fixation on this is just, nonsensical. Just ignore those, delete those. You've got the audit. That's what you really want to rely on. Go with the audit. That's it. So, to be arguing over these numbers, well, that's before me, before our current pool manager, before the pool manager, before that. And what that methodology was, I don't know. We had to, like I said, it's just been adding on. So,
okay, got it.
I think we're just.
The purpose of this, though, is really what should be happening every year, and we've discussed this many times in this committee in various forms and is that really we should be discussing at season close, when we have the numbers, we should be discussing what should be going forward in terms of the policies for Colony Pool, in terms of programming, promotion, and pricing. Those discussions should be had now, because launch really needs to happen in January or February for a pool club. And so you can't do that unless you get a running start. And
I would ask if you could go back to the Colony Pool Advisory Committee and get their inputs based on, feedback on the year, or what do they think in terms of pricing? I mean, now's the time to get the advisory committee's input to that process. The same thing, we're doing all the budget work and everything else at this point,
and the advisory committee has always used the revenue data and the membership counts, the registration counts on a year basis, and created graphs and charts in order to inform decision making, because that's what you do. You analyze and then you synthesize. But without analyzing, you're never going to come up with a decent synthesis. And so to say we're just going to erase all the data we have in the background and just drop it off, well, it precludes proper analyzation.
I would say I would focus on going forward. What did we learn this year? I don't think 2021 is actually relevant to saying what can we do going forward to actually make money and not be in the hole. I would say we've had X number of members this year, they pay X dollar amount. Is membership consistent? What happened with expenses? What does next year look like and the year after that? Because things have markedly changed since 3 years. So I would say, what happened this year? What does next year look like? And that's what the advisory committee should be putting together. What are our targets for membership, and what do we need to do to get to those targets? And then how do we manage expenses? That's it.
Well, the advisory committee can't manage expenses. That's just not within the scope of how anything that the advisory committee was formed. If we'd like to change what the advisory committee does, we certainly could.
We can have a conversation. We spent this, we spent that. That's fine. But they can make a proposal. It needs to start there with them. It doesn't need to start here with this committee. On us deciding how many members do we need to get, what were the expenses last year in order to at least break even. That needs to start at the advisory level. and the people that are boots on the ground and that lived and breathed it all summer, and then bring the recommendations here. We are at average 1,600 members. What do we need to do to get to 1,700, 1,800? What is our capacity? What is our max? Do we need to send out a flyer? Do we need to invite other people from other towns? I don't know. That's what the advisory committee could do.
What is the issue? Is it that the advisory committee is not getting the data, or they're not getting?
The issue is that that there was incorrect information presented here to this committee in this report, and that I had asked for it to be reviewed and revised based on, and asked what the plan was for that, and I was told that we're gonna drop that data, okay? And I don't think that's a prudent decision, okay? And I was able to quickly get it just by looking it through an audit. And
So the data is there, whether it's in this spreadsheet is intended for 2024 data. You have the data. Nobody's saying delete the audits, don't look at the numbers, you have it. So why are we arguing about cells in here that have they're irrelevant. The point of this report is 2024 and 2023. As I said, no other report, you're not going over the police department's 2021 numbers. You're not going over the clerk's 21 numbers. So why are we fixating on this? Because 2021 makes somebody look better? So let's just ignore this, the 2024 numbers, that's the point of this report.
Well, I didn't bring up making somebody look better, but Mr. Shoddy, you
No.
also asked,
No.
you had
Okay,
it
we're gonna move
excluded
on.
from my own
I'm not
biography,
getting- I'm
what
not
happened in
getting-
2021, that was on the township website. So it is clear to me what you're trying to do.
No, I'm not trying
And
to
then
do
you-
anything, I'm trying to
you've
make sure that
organized
this
it.
board and individuals on this board don't politicize government action. That's what I'm trying to do. That's my obligation, that's the clerk's obligation. We're not gonna
Okay.
let anybody politicize things.
There was an audit, and we all agreed
So
to
you
the
got
audit.
the audit, use the audit,
So
there you
then
go.
why wouldn't that be your answer,
Meeting
Mr.
is over.
Shahadi? Why would your answer be instead, we'll just delete all the old information? Why
No,
don't we
I
just
said
say,
I'm
hey,
not-
I have another form of,
Stop,
Okay.
stop
I have another
paraphrasing. This is-
reference
this is
Okay,
not-
I've had
this
my
is not
fill,
your
I've had my
campaign
fill.
podium, okay?
Mr. LaCounty, I'm gonna formally open the public hearing, nobody's online, right?
No one's online, no one's in the
Okay, I
audience.
don't want it to be said I didn't open a public hearing, and I'm gonna close the public hearing. I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
I'll second.
And then what's the reason we're supposed to publicly state?
What is the reason, what were we left to discuss?
Contract negotiation.
Contract negotiation.
Okay. Mr. Lewis?
yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Choi?
Yes.
Mayor Ewald?
Yes, and we do not anticipate taking any action after, but we'll resume in public session to close out the meeting. And we are in executive session. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Okay.
Affordable housing plan and Burns Road.
I think we finished discussing
did that.
affordable